Today we're going to take a look at a brand new microphone from Warm Audio, and yet again, it is another recreation of a very classic microphone, and it's an interesting value proposition, so let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Cole Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by for another video. Now, I did just talk about how microphone videos are hard to make in a previous video, maybe the last video you saw. And this is no exception. Microphone videos are hard to make, and in that video I said that I try to only do them if it's a unique value proposition, if it's something that I've not seen before, or if it is a truly like game-changing, unbelievable microphone. So this definitely falls under the value proposition. So what they have done here, I'm just gonna kind of unbox this right in front of you. Cool case. And you got the label on the side that has your serial number and all your info on it. And then if we open this case up, you grab it here. It's a solid case. Oh, that's a heavy microphone. You've got your Crown Royal style bag that we all use for these microphones. And then when you open it here, there we go. There she is. Take a look at that. That is a really good looking microphone, and it is shockingly heavy. This is a very heavy, stout, solid feeling microphone. So the first impression when you open this is like, oh wow, it's impressive. None of that really matters if it doesn't sound good. So today, what we're gonna do is we're going to try it out on some vocals. We're gonna try it out as a mono overhead on a drum kit. We're gonna try it as an outside kick microphone. And then we're gonna try it as a pair of room microphones on a drum kit. And then I'm gonna jump into Pro Tools and I'm gonna show you how I would process a big ribbon microphone like this for drums. And I'm gonna walk you through my steps of how I would mix this. So let's get into it. This is the Warm Audio WA-44. Before we get into it, as always, there are links down in the description below for this microphone if you want to go see prices and specs and all that kind of stuff. So let's jump in to hearing what this microphone sounds like. Now, I was fortunate enough to have my good friend Haley Verhollen over. I've been mispronouncing her name for literally years, even though she's my own client, and I've had her in videos before. I feel so awful about this. She just never corrected me, so I didn't know. But anyway, Haley Verhollen, one of my favorite singers here in Nashville. I had the pleasure of having her over, so that way we could hear what this microphone sounds like through some vocals. Let's check that out.
Go on, this town's been talking, I'm hanging on every word of how you done me wrong. I think it's kind of funny how you're getting what you deserve.
So along with this microphone, they introduced the Warm Lifter. This is phantom powered, and it increases the output of the microphone, or increases the signal, so that way you can run your mic pre's a little quieter, so that way you don't introduce as much noise, because ribbon microphones traditionally have a fairly low output. This one has a unique take on it though, as it has a couple of switches on the front here, so you've got a high pass and a high shelf to change the character of the microphone. That's pretty cool, so we're gonna test that out on vocals.
Go on, this town's been talking, I'm hanging on every word of how you done me wrong. I think it's kind of funny how you're getting what you deserve. I know the preacher and bartender side with me. Even the next door neighbor's thinking what I think. What's growing on the grapevine? No, it's never tasted so sweet.
I was literally like, someone brought you up, and I said something. They're like, "That's not how you say your last name." And I'm like, my own client, who I've had in videos.
It's my fault.
No, it's not your fault at all.
Well, it's just funny because I got to the point where I just stopped correcting people because if you know one way and you don't know the other, it's fine either way because I'm the same person.
That's true. Tell everybody, you've been on a wild run lately. Tell everybody what you've been up to, if you could.
Yeah. So recently, last year actually, I got onto the Tractor Supply Emerging Artist Program. I got to work with Ashley McBride through that and open for Lainey Wilson. I also got to record a song over at the Blackbird Studio. It's called House Always Wins, if you want to check that out. And it ended with me playing on the Grand Ole Opry stage with Lainey Wilson in last October. So
so awesome.
Yeah.
So pumped for you. And I just want to give a huge shout out to Haley and thank her for coming over to help me out with this video. She's one of my favorite singers around, one of my favorite singers that I've worked with. So if you wouldn't mind, hit the links in the description. Go check out her on her socials. Go check out the music. There's a handful of songs that I've produced for her. She has a handful of other songs out as well. Please go check her out as thanks for her being involved in this and agreeing to help me out with this video. I really, really appreciate her. Next up, we're going to go over to Lester Estelle's place. Lester is the drummer for Kelly Clarkson. He's played with all kinds of people, big and rich, and like he was in a rock band called Pillar, and like he's one of my favorite drummers in the world, and he's one of my favorite people that I know. I'm proud to call him a friend, and he plays on tons and tons of songs for me when I'm actually producing for people. So let's head over to Lester's, and let's take a listen and look at what these microphones sound like on drums. Okay, so over here at my good buddy Lester's house.
Hi.
Hi. We're gonna do a couple things here. So first up, we've got this as a mono overhead because that's something that we do. Lester does here, and I like a lot. Like there's a Coles 4038 right there, so we're gonna stick it right next to it, see what she sounds like, and then we're also doing outside kick on this pass. Because, I mean, why not? And then we'll do this, and then we're going to switch it up and try it in a different position.
Here's the level check.
There you go. Okay, so just for people that were wondering, both the overhead kick out and when we were using rooms, we were running through these BAE 1084s, and they're flat with no EQ. Can people hire you for drums?
Hit me up. I'm around.
How do people get a hold of you?
My socials,
Yep.
or my website is lester@lesterdrums.com, and all my socials are at Lester Estelle. So
I'll put links down below.
yes.
Best drummer on earth.
No, I'm not. Thank you.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate it. Now, when would you use a microphone like this? Now, in my opinion, I would use this on vocals for any sort of folky, bluegrassy, Americana, any sort of things that you want, like the vintage character, any sort of lo-fi pop. It'd be really awesome on. This would also sound great on acoustic guitar and electric guitar amps if you were going after that vintagey lo-fi kind of thing. But to me personally, where I would use it absolutely the most on is on drums. We have always used a ribbon microphone as a mono overhead, and it is very common for me personally to use a mono overhead in the verses of songs and then switch to the stereo overheads in the choruses of a song. Just a way to make everything just pop a little harder. And when I'm doing that, it's pretty often that I like to have a ribbon microphone in the mono overhead position. And this does a couple things. One, in the choruses, the drums get wider and bigger and more impressive sounding. But I also talk a lot about how I want the frequency spectrum to grow in a chorus. And so one of the ways that I do this is by using different microphone choices like this for overheads for drums, because a big vintage sounding ribbon microphone like this Warm Audio WA-44 it kind of has a rolled off top. The top is kind of softer. And so what this allows me to do is go from a mono softer overhead to like a full frequency spectrum, full width overheads on drums. Now I do massage this a little bit to make sure it's not too shocking of a difference, but this is the general principle. So I love it on mono overheads. I also really love it on outside kick. It's a very famous use case for this, or kind of out in front of the whole drum kit. You can use it in front of outside kick if you want, but kind of just the whole outside of the drum kit as a big, thick, gooey picture of the drum kit is very interesting. And we're gonna jump into Pro Tools here and show you how I process this whole thing. And then of course, ribbon microphones on drum rooms are my favorite thing, because you get the pickup pattern on a ribbon microphone is figure 8, which means it picks up the exact same amount of sound from in front of the microphone as it does from behind the microphone. And so what this usually does is it makes your room microphones on your drum kit, or any room microphone on an acoustic, or anything you would use a room microphone on, it makes your room sound significantly larger than it actually is. And it's one of my favorite techniques to actually use. So whether I'm tracking with Lester, which he plays on most things for me, but whether I'm tracking with him or whether I am just tracking like at any other studio with any other drummer, there are always room microphones, or figure 8 microphones, I should say, not necessarily ribbons, but there's always at least a figure 8 microphone on the room tracks, and I generally prefer ribbons on those room microphones. Okay, so let me show you how I would process these in an actual song. So we're going to take a look at the drums here, and basically what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do, this is kind of the rough mix that you see here. Now these are as these drums are tracked. A lot of these tracks were with EQ and compression, because that's how we actually track. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to mute the sub kick here, because a sub kick is in a similar ballpark as what we're going to use as this front of kit microphone. You can see the front of kit right here, this FOK-44. So here's what the drums sound like just on their own with a level job and the way that we track them. Really good, solid sounding drums. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to process this front of kick. So here's what that sounds like on its own. Here it's kind of dark, kind of gooey, but lots of sub bass. So we're going to do this with everything going at the same time. We're just going to open up an EQ. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to switch this to linear phase, because any time I'm doing any sort of work specifically with the low end of a kick drum, I want to make sure that that phase relationship stays good with the other kick drum microphones. So linear phase always, and what I'm going to do, because this is how I like to process it, I'm just going to do a real subtle high, low pass, and then we're going to play around. So here we go. We're going to do a high pass, pretty steep high pass, and then we're going to boost. Yep. Then when we mute this, back in. Super thick, super punchy, but just that sub bass, that weight, the weight of the drums just increases significantly with this. Now let's go to our mono overhead. Let's mute the regular overheads, and let's check out this mono overhead, which is the, let's mute that, which is the 44 here. So here's what just it sounds like a mono overhead. We're going to put an EQ on this. Now this I'm going to go for the Kirchhoff EQ because I like the dynamic processing in this a little bit better, and I like dynamically processing my overheads. So first thing we can see here is we got this resonance about 450. Let's get rid of that. Next thing we're going to do, I want to boost the thickness of that snare drum. And I usually go just a little bit below the fundamental of the snare. Then we're going to high pass right below that. Because I don't really want the kick drum, I don't want the bottom end of the kick drum coming through my overheads very much. The next thing we're going to do is usually somewhere in this range, the 2.5 to 4K range. I like using a dynamic EQ here. You could use a multi-band compressor if you wanted. There's a bunch of different ways to do this, but I find that it's easier to just use a plug-in like this that kind of has it all in one. And so what we're going to do, we're going to start with 4K. We're going to click the D here for dynamics. We're going to pull the range down to 4 or 5 dB. We're going to pull the attack all the way fastest and the release all the way fastest, and we're going to widen this slope up a little bit here. Let's take a listen. Now I only want that to kick in on the crashes, no other time. There we go. We're kind of hitting on the snare drum, so we're going to slow the attack down to try to miss the snare drum and still get the cymbals. There we go. So something like that. We're just touching the snare drum a little bit. I like to try to avoid that with a center mono overhead. It's a little bit more difficult. But what I really want to do is control that kind of harshness character of when the cymbals hit, when he crashes. I just want to tame that a little bit. So here's without. With. Now to me that's a little bit clearer. Now if you wanted the more modern thing, a little more sizzle, you just high shelf it. To whatever taste you want. And that gives you a more traditional sounding overhead. But the interesting thing about ribbons is ribbons generally take EQ better than like a large diaphragm condenser. You can really rip, I mean I'm 8.5 dB of 9K. Sounds perfectly fine and natural to me. So that's how I would do that. Let's listen to this in context of the whole kit. Oh, that kick. To me, that's the sauce. Yeah, that sounds great. So if we were using it as a front of kick or front of kit microphone, that's how I would process that. If we're using it as a mono overhead, that's generally what I do to it. Let's move on, though, to using it as room mics. And I'm not going to change anything else, but we are just, let's see, I'm going to turn the sub kick back on because we do not have the 44 in front of the kit because we were using both of them for the room mics. So let's take a listen to this. So here's what the room mics sound like on their own. We're going to mute the other room mics and this hallway and this crush room. Yes, here we go. So that's what the room mic sounds like on its own. Let's go in with the kit. Now, here's what I like to do with my room mics. First of all, I like to narrow them a little bit. Helps bring that kick and snare to the actual center. And also, I have an entire video about depth in mixing. And the further away you want something to seem, the narrower it actually needs to be. I'll link that video down below. So let's start EQing this here. Now for room mics for me, it's pretty straightforward. I get rid of the thump of the kick drum. We high pass like somewhere in here. We pull down a little of that kind of 4K, 3K, 4K thing. Get rid of this kind of resonance at like 400. I feel like every drum kit has some version of this. That's where I'd like it to be. With that. And then if we turn the auto gain on, I like that way better with the kit. Mute. Listen to how much personality comes just from that room mic. Let's turn it way down. I guess we should probably turn the overheads back on. That's kind of my bad. Okay, here we go. Without the room. And with the room. To me, that's the room mics and the overheads are really where everything comes together to where it stops being individual drums, individual shells, your kick, your snare, your toms, and where it becomes a cohesive instrument. That's one of the things that I do. I sculpt the kick in and the snare top and all the tom microphones to give the sonic character that I'd like them to have. So however much thickness or crack or snap or how much top in or sizzle, whatever all you want to say, I dial in the close mics for that. But the overheads and the room mics, that's where I blend the whole kit back together again. So that way it sounds like a cohesive instrument, even though I've processed all those individual things to have the character that I want the drum kit to have. So that's how I would process these in a mix. That is the Warm Audio WA-44. Now, I think that this is a unique value proposition because the microphone that this is modeled after starts at like $3,500 and goes up to like $6,400. And I don't have them next to each other. It's not something that I can really speak on without a side-by-side comparison how close it is, but I think we've done this thing with Warm Audio enough that they are really, really good at giving you 95 to 98% of the original thing at a fraction of the cost. And that's what I think is appealing about this, especially for drum rooms and overheads. Because could you hear the difference in a drum room, in a mixed song? I don't believe you could. I genuinely don't believe you could. It's a fantastic perspective for a big, gooey, thick ribbon like this to use as a drum room microphone, and I think it's a home run. I really do. I really like this. I really like it at the price point. Links down below for to go check this out and check out prices and all of that. So be sure to hit the links in the description below. But I just think it's a great value proposition, and I think if you are getting into recording drums, or if you want that lo-fi Americana, indie, lo-fi poppy kind of thing, this is a great option. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. And drop me a comment and let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.